Good morning, Linda. Derick, Mama.
Good morning, honey bun.
So fun. So, yeah, we're going to do this like have your all conversation, these spheres of impact. I want to hear
Mm,
how you're thinking about your spheres of impact. So, we'll start in and go out.
Spheres, not fears.
No.
I first heard you say fears, and I was like, oh, God, okay, well, let's just dive right into all the fears about everything in your life. Fears, much better.
Yeah. Spheres, rounded, gentle spheres.
Yes,
No,
bouncing in the world,
no fear necessary.
bubbles. Okay,
Fear optional, fear invited. If
it
fear is in the sphere, share the fear.
likely will come into the picture.
Okay. So start at the center. You are my self-care guru. Some days. What you tell me, how do you think about how you care for yourself and the impact of that?
Mm. You know, having this spacious time schedule is, I've heard it said, it's a practice thrust upon us that we didn't ask for. And so I feel very grateful to have practices that I can call on and actually deepen. And, it certainly calls to me to spend more time in practice. And that said, I also quickly then think I'm very lucky to be able to spend more time in practice. That I'm not worrying or afraid or having to deal with so many other issues. I have time, and there's a gift in that. So daily meditation practice, more yoga practices, all the access that has opened up of free opportunities. There's Omega and Kripalu and Shambhala and just lots of. I thought this morning they're the lions in the midst of all this. They're really the lions, Pema Chodron and the wisdom keepers that are providing us. Just so many opportunities to practice alone and together in that weird way. So I'm very grateful for practice. I think I also saw somewhere it's not a luxury, like resilience and stability and that ability to hold to practice is really critical. And I'm grateful to be able to share that in my work, which might be the next question. Um, I feel like my own lion spirit is called on because I have the opportunity to self practice. I also have the responsibility to offer that. So,
Pay it forward. Love
yeah,
that.
pay it forward. Exactly.
The two quotes that rings that I'll include after, but one was yesterday, came up in our B Corp Women CEO workshop. This unbelievable facilitator had us talk in groups about the Audre Lorde quote that I won't quite quote, but the spirit is that self-care is a political act.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I've known that and said that the self is political, that it's your first responsibility. I mean, I think Thich Nhat Hanh has said, if you're not peaceful, Buddha said, the peace in the world is the peace that you experience inside. And if you can't, well, not to say it in a negative way, but to the extent that you can access peace, that is the reflection into the world. Yeah, it is political and taking care of oneself, and it's so much undoing of our attitudes towards selfishness.
Mhm.
I certainly battle with that. And um, Angel Kyoto, in the piece that she did with John Kabat-Zinn, there was that magnificent moment when one woman called in with a question saying that she was doing her work and her practice, and then she started feeling guilty because so many other people are struggling so much with food and water and house, roof over your head. Um, and Angel said, um, your guilt does not ease my suffering. It's of no use to me. And that was pretty profound.
Yeah.
Just do your work, just stay with it. And that is what ripples out to help people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beauty. So the next sphere is about friends and family, where you care so much, so monstrously lovingly. Talk a little bit about your impact in that realm.
Well, we saw two friends came over that we hadn't seen in, of course, many weeks. And not that we don't go weeks without seeing them, without a visit. So I was saying that's not what's unusual, but it was so unusual. It just was, there was I don't know how to say it, kind of didn't know how quite to settle in, because we couldn't touch, we couldn't hug. One of the friends has been so sequestered, she thought it was 27 feet that we had to stay apart. So every time I moved near her, she kept moving apart. And I said, why are you doing that? And she said, well, 27 feet. And I said, no, 6 feet. Oh, so just these dealing with the fears that were between us, really. And oh my gosh, I could sob with how good it was to see her and him. That seeing her in my yoga class or talking on the phone does not take the place of this longing to be with. And then, without blowing your professional public cover, when
Time ago, that was good. There isn't one of those.
When I was talking to you the other day, and I heard this suffering, the grief, the sadness, the struggle, the tiredness in you, I thought, I need to go there. I need to see her. I need to be with her. This is good. Again, it's not the being with. And I think maybe we're all developing abilities to be more sensitive to this kind of being with. I feel you. I can feel that resonance. And it is not being together in the flesh. And I miss that. And I also find that there are times when I just need to hear one of you. I just need to call a friend right then. I need that grounding connection to help get through the sense of aimless wandering. So for me, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot and you don't know what you got till it's gone. Thank you, Jolie. So I don't think I ever took my friendships for granted or my relationships for granted, but it's certainly heightened now in terms of how I value you in my life and need you in my life, and am made more whole by my friendships. Yeah.
The presence piece is interesting, though. I've been wondering about that. In this call yesterday, it was a workshop that we've done for the last 2 years in person and would have been in person yesterday at Eileen Fisher's beautiful space with beautiful meals and all that goes with being physically together. So we had 2 hours on Zoom, and hopefully in September, the real thing. And so there was a visualization forward to next year when hopefully we're together. But that means that all kinds of people can't be there, right? You're seeing in the,
Ah, yeah.
Lexington, Kentucky and rural Canada and England, and
Sure.
who are, these are small, mostly small business owners who have families and businesses and, aren't going to fly for a 6-hour
Yeah.
thing. And so I was just wondering, can we learn to feel the resonance, right? And can we learn to be present for each other without in the lack of physical presence in
Yeah.
this? 'Cause I
Did you
think
think yes?
yes.
I think yes.
I what I know is that we should try.
Yeah.
It feels like, or I want us to try,
Yeah.
because that would be so powerful to truly remove geographic boundaries in that way.
Well, right, exactly. It does touch on death
Mm,
and the energetics of life and death.
mm,
And no question that this is demanding that
mm,
we expand our capability that way.
mm,
Just simply to grasp the magnitude
mm,
of the pandemicness, the global. If you, in order to tune into that, that's the realm that you have to access, which
mhm,
is the when people die or in
mm,
they leave us, and yet we're still
mm,
feel them.
mhm.
We still sense that. So I think that's a dark gift of this all, is heightening that level of sensitivity
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
We've been doing the class with our favorite Natalie, and her sign off now is, sometimes she'll say what her next class is, but she always says, "See you all the time,"
Yeah. I
which is
just heard that.
it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. See you all the time.
yeah. All right. So above the fold, right, the more public or external parts of the impact. So you alluded to it, but say a little bit more about work, job,
Mm.
employer in the way that it is in your portfolio career these days.
Yeah. Well, in my Renaissance way, I have three parts of my work. And one is as the registrar of voters. And that's been so interesting as we try to figure out how to carry on, how to have a public primary, a public election, August, November, in the midst of this. And it's certainly complicated. It's requiring a lot of work on a lot of people's part to come together and figure out what would be safe. And, for me, a little bit, I was sort of poo pooing it like, well, of course, our election workers are going to work. Of course, they'll come. Maybe not the elder ones, the most elder, but the others will. And then I got a request for jury duty at a local courthouse. And well, that felt different. Do I want to do that? Will I do that? Of course, the courts aren't open, so it's moot, and I won't be doing that. But it certainly put it in perspective of how am I going to feel about showing up at the Rockville courthouse amidst all of that with no certainty that it's been hygienically, maintained, or lots of people and unknown factors. And it humbled me to the reality of everybody has to make that choice. So that's just, and it will probably revolutionize the way we do elections in some way. Connecticut may shift its constitutional regulation to vote by mail or the absentee ballot option. And So that's been interesting, challenging. And the second part is being a massage therapist, which so many things that could make one sob. I miss that work so deeply. I myself miss receiving body work. There is nothing that takes the place. You can put potions and lotions and analgesics, and you can rub up against a tree like a bear, whatever, yoga, self-massage. It just doesn't take the place of that healing power of touch, of educated touch, especially. Even a loved one rubbing your feet is a beautiful thing, but when someone has the knowledge and wisdom of being a touch therapist, that is a very unique and special medicine that I miss personally receiving and giving. I miss loving my clients in that way, as do they. And then the whole profession of touch is interrupted indefinitely. And we were, in a way, I think, just making cultural strides towards acknowledging the need for contact, that kind of contact. And now no one can work. So the sadness, the pain, the fear of thousands of massage therapists not able to work with very little cushion. And I know we talk about money afterwards, but just not able to do what gives them purpose and meaning in their life is very sad. And I hear lots of people, there's, Ruth Werner and Tracy Walton are two sort of leading pathology and science-based perspectives on massage therapy. The conversation of, are we personal service professionals like hair, nails, so forth, or are we part of the medical profession? And yesterday I read, Ruth saying essential medical care means if you don't get it, you'll die. Massage therapy is not that. I mean, you'll suffer, you'll miss it, and in some ways, maybe soul withers without that contact, but you won't die. And so until we know that that's a safe practice to return to, we shouldn't do it. So there's that. And then lastly, teaching yoga, which has continued to thrive miraculously on Zoom. And there's pluses and minuses. I can't really see students if there's lots of little gallery view images. I really can't see enough to give corrections. So it's interesting to have some beginner students, and this is their first way of interacting with yoga. So I'm texting them and emailing them and saying, tell me what it feels like, what's happening. But for more experienced students, it's way better than not being able to have it. And in some ways, being in your own space, I keep saying it's sort of like dance like nobody's watching. So do your tree like nobody's watching. And if you fall over, in class, we always, no, we're not judging in a yoga class, but falling over, no one feels all that great about that. So at home, if you don't feel like doing those extra crunches, no one's going to judge. No one knows. So you really can honor, this is my practice. I'm going to practice the way I want to tonight. And I think that's great. It's great for a teacher because we've talked about this as an instructor in person, I get so much from the energetic bounce
Yeah.
from the students, from eye contact, from reading their pace, their breath, the cues, and then I lead accordingly. But on Zoom, I can do that a little bit,
Mm.
but it's much more I'm going to do my practice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go by what I feel like, and I'm going to assume that a lot of what I'm experiencing, so are you all.
Yeah.
So it's safe to be guided by my North Star,
Mm.
and probably a lot of that will share and parallel yours.
Mm.
So it's just that adding that technological level to my life, to a lot of our lives, um, has been wonderful. And I assume I'll continue once we go back into the studio.
Mhm.
I've had people, students from all over the country say, boy, if you did this, if you continue to do this, I will continue to take class with you. And that'll be a great, like you were saying, with, going back to the Ellen Fisher next year, there will be people who I can continue to work with that I wouldn't if I was only in the studio. So work is okay. And in general, sometimes I feel because I'm morphing my retirement,
Mm.
I wouldn't consider myself retired, but it's definitely a different pace than I was managing 3 months ago, even 2 months ago. Gosh, it's only 2 months, or feels like a lot. Um, it is a slower morning. I stay up later, sometimes at night, binging something, because it is a softer schedule. And that's not all bad. Some days I feel guilty. Some days I worry about money. Some days I feel lost. And other days I think, oh, an extra cup of tea and some more time with mantra
Mm.
is lovely.
Mhm.
So that's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. And then sort of porous, but the next level of community. And so those
Mm.
non-work responsibilities, engagements, ties, which again, I know you two care and
Yeah.
work a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I live in a small town, very small town.
Mm.
And within that, I live on a lake. So there's a lake community, and then there's the town community. And our town is very generous and attentive to one another. And it's lovely. And now more than ever. First of all, there's just more people home. If we were a bedroom community, people heading off early in the morning to go work in Hartford or elsewhere, they're home, they're around. And so we're just seeing each other a lot more walking, walk around the lake. It's quite it's like a circumambulating, circum, like a, a pathway. What do we make? We build not a maze, where you go to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
center, a mandala. No, what?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. So people are walking and seeing each other, and we keep our distance, but it's so good to see each
Mm.
other and keep track and sharing. Everybody's sharing stories, so we're weaving what's happening with you, what's happening with you, who's suffering, who's thriving, who's and the soup kitchen and the food pantry and um, just so many resources, really, for people. So that's been good. And yeah, I think this close, small, well-knit community is helping to keep each other well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll
Yeah.
become a blue zone.
Say that again.
Maybe Andover becomes a blue zone. Start noticing hotspots of centenarians over the next, those communities. Okinawa, and I think Hawaii has one, and these places where people are just super connected. There's a few elements to it, but there's these crazy spikes of centenarians in, I think they found 8 or 9 kind of hotspots around the world that they've studied, and it's about social connection. It's about gentle exercise and
Yeah.
activity and largely plant-based eating and
yeah. Well, and all those things that get challenged and sort of forced by pandemic, in the sense that it's in a way lighter, easier to eat vegetarian because, for obvious reasons, the meat packing chain and all that, and cleanup and expense and all that is pushed by that. The exercise pushed by that. And then one other thing, what did you just say? Oh, financial hardship. If we think a year out, 2 years out, the financial hardship that this will, those of us who have been maintaining, the 60s, 70s, 80s years where you're, collecting your Social Security, but it's not enough to live on. So you have, what if we can't go back to massage therapy? What if that part of our income isn't there? And for all of us, the things that we did to generate income, what if those smaller will need each other more? And I have been thinking over the last few years much more and reaching out to my community about shared housing in some form of buying property where we each have our own unique homes, independent homes, but we also have shared resources, shared space, shared care.
totally.
I would imagine this is causing us, I know it is, to think much more realistically about that. If before it was sort of a nice to dream about, it's becoming more probably an essential.
Yeah. So good segue to the final outer sphere of money and how you think about those choices and constraints.
Well, down the list. I think I'm learning a lot of lessons about enough. What is enough? And that perhaps I have to look at how a lot of my life I lived somewhat smugly, is the word that comes up, of taking for granted a paycheck of a certain amount that included healthcare, that just came every week or every other week, and it was more than enough. And when that's not the case, it just challenges so many values and beliefs and assumptions. Do I really need that extra margin? Or you can't take it with you? Is enough enough? If there's enough from yoga classes to have healthy groceries, so be it. Maybe I have to think a little more carefully about what we eat and how I shop and so forth. But what is enough? And the security that I associated with that myth, that is forever and can be taken for granted. that's not where security comes from. Or I don't want that to be, I don't want that to hold that myth of security. I want the security to come from a much deeper, more integrated, more interrelated. And indeed, that has been the case because for me personally, some people in our community are not interrupted financially, just the way it is. And some of us are. And to see the way those who are not interrupted are helping out those who are. I've had a number of my clients and yoga students buy sessions out into the future so that I have money now, knowing that we'll have that to look forward to. You know, there's also a real optimism in that. But there's also an incredible generosity and gratitude. And then reinforcing of the interdependence. Of course, we're interdependent. And when one thrives, potentially the rest of us can thrive if that's opened up and acknowledged. So I think there's a lot of lessons in that that are not easy. It's not easy to change those deep set beliefs that are in some ways so mirrored by the culture, the myths, I should say, mirrored by the culture. And then when we try to adopt very different perspectives, they're often in conflict with what we see in the culture. Oh gosh, I don't know if this is appropriate, but there's a Lexus ad that is really painful. I mean, there's a lot of them, but it says something about, is this a time for business as usual? No, this is a time for personal attention. Well, that's what we've always done. Okay, well, good for you. It's just odd. It's just odd. Why is that odd? I guess because it's talking to a slice of the population that can continue to take for granted that myth of security, of being a have. And it doesn't mean much to the people who don't have, who are less than have. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the ad shift is fascinating, right? Because on one hand, stuff like that, so tone deaf. So, and sometimes a little bit of an eye roll if the entire ad break is about first responders or, I mean, yes. And, one that's gotten shat upon a lot is I don't remember which airline, we're with you, we travel with you. And, everyone's tweets have been like, not when I have a 36-pound bag, you don't.
Not when my knees are implanted in my chest.
Right. Not when I'm 6 hours into a flight and about to pass out of hunger, but all you have is,
peanuts and I'm allergic.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
That's interesting. Commercialism.
The world adjusts.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Yeah.
Or not at all. And I think that,
or suddenly, in some way, I was going to say, like,
wow, you have never seen that before.
Mm.
And then that does make me hope that we will change, that we will come to understand and live differently and better. And it worries me that we won't. I won't.
Yeah. So bringing this dashboard all together, having run through it, strolled through it, are there trade-offs that you think of or that strike you about where you're able to lean in or be of impact or fulfillment, and that costs something elsewhere? Do they push pull, or do they amplify? And
Mhm.
what are the interrelationships?
Mm. I'm reading Sapiens.
Hmm. Lucky.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I never want it to end. And each nugget is so chewable. And so one of the nuggets right now is in the context of of spirituality and the formulation, the founding of either monotheism or polytheism or some combination. And in that process of evolution of thought and belief, the body and the mind split off, and the mind becomes the master, and the body actually not only subservient but associated with evil. And whatever time frame that is, thousands of years, many thousands of years, slow turning evolution to the awarenesses of body mind wisdom at this point in our culture, in our evolution, that not only does the mind control the body or the mind organize the body, but the body organizes the mind. And that first level, that is one of the wisdoms of yoga, is that it starts with the body. That's one of the beautiful things about yoga, about Natalie's teaching, is start with the body, but it's all metaphor for the mind. It's all an expression, a blueprint of what's happening in the energetics and the mind and the soul. So somehow, I think the removal, the inaccessibility of physical contact, um, of touch, it seems to be heightening the awareness of the need for that. And so maybe one of the things that we return to is an awareness of how essential that is and how healthy and wise and beneficial it is. And maybe when we're making decisions at the Secretary of State's level about what should happen, how this new process of voting should happen, maybe we bring more body wisdom into it. Maybe we're paying attention to the quality of voice, the tone of voice, the sensations in the body when we're having conference calls and moving through these decisions. Maybe, as we were saying earlier, in the way that we energetically resonate with one another, we'll have a little more volume in the conversation than being sort of frozen up in the cerebral cortex and the eyes and the ears and dropping down into heart and belly and sensation.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, two quick takes for this Mother's Day episode of our little interviews. What is your biggest surprise as you approach your 40th Mother's Day?
Ah, hmm. I think how the cycles just continue. The cycles, the cycles of how mother, daughter, how parent, child, how you and I continue to reinvent or rehabit the way we are in relationship. And I feel that that is again changing. That as I see you moving into your 40th birth year, I am different in relationship to that. And if maybe, maybe in the ways that in the previous couple of decades, the volume is louder on independence, right? Because the maturation process, the individuation process continues. As we come into these years, the interdependence evolves more. And sometimes that there's an awkwardness to that of, I know that I have sometimes continued to be and love to be, in a way, parented by you. Your wisdom kind of, holds me and nurtures me. And then there's ways that, and then that goes back and forth. And that seems to be becoming easier, becoming a new natural, a new normal, and lovely and rich in a way that maybe, just more than ever in our history. Yeah.
Herstory.
Herstory. Mommy, is there herstory? Yes, honey, there is.
Early indicator. And my final question, what is your biggest point of pride?
I was going to say the dogs. It's my neighbor with the muffins.
Oh, yum.
Would you want to help Andrea through the dog barrier?
Leaving things on your counter.
Hi, Andrea. I'm still on with Nellie.
I know. I'm leaving it on your counter. I didn't have the dogs to get it.
Oh.
Hi, Nellie. Bye.
Hi, Andrea. I'll call you in a minute.
Okay.
Pride. Well, no question, you. The very opposite extreme of failure to launch. The thrill of soaring 20s, soaring 40s, to see you thrive on your roots and just branch out into the world so beautifully, reach out into the world, be so nurturing, having received your nurturing, giving that back into the world, in your family, in your work, in the world. Yeah, definitely, no question. And I think that reflects, to me, letting fall away so much. Is there a term for parenting guilt? How I've often, when people tell me how amazing you are, I say, and they refer to me in parenting, I say, in spite of me.
No.
But, again, in these older years, I think, well, that warrior Sunday school curriculum, even though you thought it was stupid, then I don't want to do that, Mommy. I think is a worthy root of yours, ROOT. And I'm glad that I lived my life in such a way that provided you that, knowing that in your whole life, you had access to many, many things. But I am proud. And I think even in the midst of this pandemic, if I have sometimes felt the opposite of pride about my life choices, um, to follow my path of mindfulness and meditation and inwardness and um, human potential. More and more, I feel proud of that now. Proud is such a funny word, isn't it? Concept. I feel um, integrity. You.
Mhm. You, because of you.
Oh, I want to do one of those. Here, put your fingers up here. Yeah, closer, up a little. Ta-da! There it is.
You do a heart?
Do this.
Oh.
Oh, this. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Oh, I feel that.
Yeah?
Did you just feel that?
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yep. We're learning.
And then this. Ta-da! And this.
Mwah. Thank you, Mama.
So good to talk with you.
Mhm.
Fun.
So good to talk with you.